Good morning. Today we come to Book 1, Canto 4, The Secret Knowledge. Raises a question, what is this secret knowledge? Why does he call this the secret knowledge? He's written everything in Life Divine. Savitri itself is a much larger volume. What is it that makes this canto and what he says in this canto a secret knowledge? The world knows about the existence of of matter. Science has studied the material world in depth. For thousands of years, humanity also knows about the existence of spirit. There may be different versions and different expressions and different knowledge or understanding about it, but the fact that spirit exists, the fact that it is real, is not a secret to humanity. Maybe 80–90% of humanity, even in the Western countries, the people say, I believe in God. So it's obviously not the secrets of matter or even the existence of spirit is not the secret knowledge. There's something else. The question is, what's the relationship between matter and spirit, between God and nature, between life and the divine? Do we understand what that relationship really is? Has anyone in the past ever fully revealed the truth of the relationship between the world and the one and the many, the finite and the infinite, the spirit and nature? That's the knowledge that he's trying to give us in this canto. And even if we understand what he says in the canto, I think it's still a secret knowledge. It will remain secret even from us. Because understanding this, what he says with our mind, is not enough to reveal the secret. We have to experience it. So the knowledge he's trying to give us is not a philosophical explanation. He's trying to give us as an experience what he has realized in his spiritual realization, what he and Mother have realized. And he describes, in the last canto, we read about Aswapati's yoga, his discovery of the self, his liberation. And after so many spiritual experiences and the highest realizations, only then he's coming to the secret knowledge. Anyone who reads the previous canto and is familiar with the greatest spiritual traditions would have said, oh, that's the secret. He has discovered the secret already. After all of that, he has to go on to discover the secret knowledge. And in the first line of the next canto, after this, Canto 5, he says, this is a knowledge that human beings have never known till now. So Aswapati is discovering, and he's trying to share with us a knowledge that is not known, that has not been known after over thousands of years. Buddha discovered the one. He discovered the peaceful, blissful oneness, which he called nirvana. For him, the world was a wheel of suffering. Shankara discovered the one as Satchidananda, pure existence, pure consciousness, bliss. For him, the world was an illusion. The Christian religions, the other religions of the West have discovered God and believed in God. And for them, life was a trial and a test to see whether you're a saint or a sinner. And according to what you do in life, you either end up in eternal heaven or eternal hell. All the real serious questions that human beings have about God are not about this high spiritual oneness, but about why the world is the way it is. If God is really all-powerful, omniscient, omnipresent, how could there be evil? How could there be suffering? And no religion, no tradition has given an explanation for that. And if we understand what he says in this canto, it opens up to us a whole new way of looking at our lives, the world around us, and the divine. All of this Appa has given to us, offered to us as a practical knowledge, as a toolkit, as a practical guide or a map in our own lives. He calls it life response. Life response is taking the secret knowledge that Sri Aurobindo and Mother have revealed and giving it to us as a practical set of knowledge and guidelines and tools that we can use to navigate our own life. In Trollope's novel, Dr. Thorne, Mary Thorne is born as the illegitimate child of a poor but very beautiful woman who was drugged by Dr. Thorne's father and seduced by him and then abandoned by him. Her mother goes off with another man and marries him, and Dr. Thorne agrees to take this orphaned, illegitimate child who has nothing and raise her as his own niece. Her father has been killed by her mother's brother, Roger, in anger over what the Thorne's brother has done. He is in prison. Thorne feels he shouldn't suffer for having opposed such an evil act of Thorne's own brother. So he gets him out of prison. Roger goes on from being a stonemason to become a contractor and one of the wealthiest men in England, earning hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds. He dies with this huge fortune. And after a long series of events, that fortune comes to Mary, and she becomes an heiress, and she marries into the Gresham family, which is one of the leading families in the country. And this girl who started out for no fault of her own as an illegitimate orphan rises to the highest level of society. Life is filled with events like this, some very dramatic, but inexplicable. By what means can we explain this story except it's fascinating? Or of an Edmond Dantes who becomes captain of a boat, wants to marry Mercedes, and just on the night of his marriage, he is arrested, falsely charged, imprisoned for 14 years on a false charge of conspiracy. Finally escapes from prison, discovers a fabulous fortune, becomes one of the wealthiest, most powerful men in the world, and seeks his revenge. These are stories to us. Yet each of us in our own life know of incidents, events, circumstances, and results which we can't explain even now. With all that we know of Mother and Sri Aurobindo, with all we have known of life response, still it remains a secret. There's something more for us to learn. I've divided the Canto into 75 sections, or 74 or 75 sections, and I've tried to give a key thought for each of the sections. That's what comes at the top of each screen. And then the lines that I think are describing that thought. And if you read through the 75 thoughts, I think and I hope you get an idea of the main outline of the arguments in the canto. But of course, every line of the poem has something to offer us. It's not just to give an argument that he writes this. He could have just written it as 75 sentences then. He has summarized it in Life Divine. I've tried to highlight some of the lines that I think are most important or powerful or interesting in bold, and some of the key words that help us see the structure of what he's trying to say. But with all of that, at the end of our discussion of the secret knowledge, it will still be a secret. It will still be a secret from us unless we can take what he says in this canto and try to understand it in our own life, in our daily life, in our experiences, in what has happened to us. And if we can take what he says here literally as truth, as the truth, and try to understand it in our lives. He says our life is a code. It's a code. Our life is secret from us. We don't understand the language. Everything is happening around us. Events are happening all the time. Circumstances are happening all the time. But just as if it's a foreign language, we don't know how to interpret it. We don't know what it means. Whereas he says everything that happens to us has a meaning. Everything is a sign. Every event, every circumstance, every response. We talk, and Appa talks about life response, that we can make life respond. That by changing our attitude or our understanding, or by prayer or by consecration or by calling, we can evoke a response from life. But the truth, the wider truth is, life is responding to us all the time. Everything is a response. And to evoke a life response when we have a problem is a great thing. To know that by prayer or calling or 3-day calling or hourly consecration or consecration, we can evoke a response, that's a great knowledge. But that's not the secret knowledge. The secret knowledge is to be able to know the meaning of everything that happens to us. If we discover the significance of one event in a day, we feel a gratification. Oh, now I understand why this is happening. But there are 1,000 things that happen every day, small things, big things. Every minute is offering us a knowledge, but we don't know the language. He's giving us the code. He tells us, he's giving us the master key for that, so that we can read our whole life. Why does it matter? As long as we get what we want, as long as we don't solve our problems, why do we need all of this? Do I need to understand Sanskrit if I can get something in English? Because he tells us that everything is happening for a purpose. Everything is happening for the soul's realization. And the more we can read life, the more we understand why it's happening, the faster will be our progress and the greater will be our discoveries. So just because we're devotees and Mother has taken away all our problems, then why I need not study anymore? I have all that we need. The secret knowledge tells us that every minute is an opportunity. Every minute, there is a purpose in our living every minute, and we can discover it. He gives us the code. He gives us the key here. But we have to turn the key in our own selves in order to decipher it. So I'm torn between the urge to try to complete the whole canto in one session and the power of the lines, and there's so much there in the canto. So I'm not going to rush. If it goes quickly, okay. Otherwise, we will take it as 2 sessions. And if you have questions and comments during the session, don't hesitate. We're not going to rush to finish it. So remember, the last canto was all about Aswapati's spiritual experience, going from heights to greater heights, to discovering the silent self, to discovering the higher worlds, to discovering beings in those higher worlds, worlds of vistas of magnificent light and joy and power and truth, and even to discovering that in the depths of the inconscient, that light is also there. He discovered the Vedic truths of the dawn, the herds of the dawn. The light is buried even in the inconscient. And the Vedic rishis, thousands and thousands of years ago, have discovered things that other traditions have never discovered. And even in Indian tradition, a lot has been forgotten and lost. But it still is not the secret knowledge. It still did not reveal the decode for life itself. So he starts with Aswapati's yogic realization, and he says, on a height he stood that looks at greater heights. If any of you have ever climbed mountains or walked up mountains, you know that you go looking at a peak and you're trying to climb up to the peak, and only when you get to the peak, you see, oh, that's not the top. Beyond that, there are other peaks and peaks, which you couldn't see because it was blocked by this peak. And that's the truth of spirit. There's no end to the peaks. And that's why Sri Aurobindo tells us in the first chapter of Life Divine in Human Aspiration, the lesson which Shapa is always emphasizing, don't stop in the middle. Don't take a height as the end, because there's always something greater, and our destiny is to go beyond every achievement. All the religions, all that up until now have always reached a peak. It may be very great for them or great even for us, but it's not the end of the journey until we get to the final secret and realization. So don't stop in the middle. He says, our summit selves await discovery. He says here, the world that we live in is only the beginning. It's only the base. For us, it's everything. If we have what we want here, we're secure and happy, and this is everything. It's only the beginning. It's only the base for everything that we should achieve. And our achievement is not to be measured by what we do here. Our achievement is to be measured on how well we use, how fully we use life. We use the circumstances of our lives for progress. And he says, this is a world in which mind and life erect structured dreams. Our minds erect our own vision of reality. Oh, I want to be a successful businessman, or I want to have a big house. I want to have so many children. I want to have a degree. I want to travel far, and I want to be famous, whatever it is. These are our structured dreams that conceal the real reality of what we're really here for, what we have really come for. He says, there's an unborn power must build reality. This is not reality. Our dreams, our houses, our cars, our jobs, our families, our status, our popularity, our power are not the reality. There's an unborn power because it's beyond all birth, that is building a reality here. And we need to know what that reality is that power is trying to build and what it has to do with us. He says, the human being, the life we are, he calls us a death-bound littleness. We're bound by the end of a life. We're small by any standard. Doesn't matter how rich we are or how powerful we are. We are small. Death ends everything for us. He says, it's not all we are. That's not all we are. We are immortal, and we have forgotten vastnesses that await discovery on our summit selves. This is a tiny little part of our life, of our existence. And we have to break out of the limits of this structured dream to remember, discover the forgotten vastnesses and our summit selves, which are selves of our own being. And that's what Aswapati does, and that's the journey that we saw him described going through. Aswapati's very, very unusual. He's unique because he has consciously, as a yogi, he has consciously gone to discover all his heights. But for humanity as a whole, for most of us, for all of us, most of the time at least, or almost all the time, our growth towards the spirit is unconscious. We are making a progress, but we don't know what that progress is. We don't know why we're here. We don't know what we should do. Occasionally when we have a problem, we call Mother, or we consecrate, or we pray. But at all times, we have an opportunity to be making a spiritual progress, and mostly we're making it unconsciously. He says, even when we fail to look into our souls, even when we fail to remember Mother, or we are completely lost in the earthly consciousness of marriage and prestige and all of the things, money and everything that we think about, still we have parts. There are parts of us that are growing towards the light. Something in us is making a progress. And the secret knowledge is to help us awaken those parts and know how do we make a progress? Why are these things happening to us? What is it we should learn from them so that we can make more progress and we can go faster? Even when we're unconscious, something in us is aspiring. Even when we're not thinking of Mother, something in us is praying. Something else is seeking. When Darcy comes to Meriton, he doesn't know what he's seeking. And when he calls Elizabeth tolerable, he doesn't know why he does it. And yet, this is a step along his way. When Wickham comes and leashes the scandal against Darcy, he may have a reason for doing it. But the deeper reason, the deeper circumstances that are going to lead ultimately to the marriage of Elizabeth and Darcy and Jane and Bingley and Lydia and Wickham, nobody knows, nobody's thinking about. And yet still there's a path of progress. Elizabeth ended up...
Garry?
Yes, Ashok. Good morning.
Good morning. One curious question comes to my mind is when Tagore was able to get Nobel Prize for his Gitanjali, it's a surprise to me that Sri Aurobindo didn't get it for Savitri. How is that possible? Is it because of
who got the Nobel Prize?
Tagore.
Tagore.
He got it for Gitanjali in 1917 itself. But Sri Aurobindo couldn't get it for Savitri, even though this Savitri is of a much higher level. Is it because the Nobel Committee didn't understand what he was?
That's not hard to understand. I'm trying to find an analogy that would make it clear to you. If you go to grammar school, you go through kindergarten, primary school, secondary school. At the end of secondary school, what do you get? You get a graduation certificate. Even if you're a genius, even if you have made original discoveries, the secondary school can only give you what they have to offer. They can only understand. Actually, the genius will find it very difficult in secondary school, and the school will find it very difficult because no teacher can handle a genius. No teacher can even understand the genius, which is why most of the geniuses drop out of school and don't go in them at all. And if a man is a genius and then they say, how is it you didn't get a high school certificate? Say, Ramanujam, when he went to England, when he went to Cambridge, they were all looking suspicious at him. He doesn't even have a PhD. He's a genius. He's maybe the greatest mathematician in 100 years. There are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of mathematicians. None of them can do what he did. But he doesn't have a PhD. They were very reluctant to recognize him. They don't know how to recognize him. When he gives all these theorems, they don't even know whether they're true or false. Because unless you're a genius, unless you have his vision, it's taken them 100 years to prove that some of the things he said were right. They are completely unqualified to pronounce on the quality of his thought. They were suspicious. Oh, he made it all up, or he copied it from, there's nowhere to copy it because it doesn't exist anywhere. No, how do we know if it's real or not? Just because he says it, there's no proofs here. So society, the Nobel Prize is a prize made by ordinary human beings who have gone through the ordinary level to what they think is great. They can't even understand what Sri Aurobindo has said. I have talked to how many very famous scientists, like Sheldrake, who has a copy of Life Divine on his shelf. He says, when I open it up, I go to sleep. Not 1, 2, 3, 4 are like that. The Nobel Committee is completely unqualified to pass judgment on spiritual truths. Even if you see some of the things they are rewarding, they're part of the society. Some of them are very foolish in itself. They missed giving Gandhi. How could anybody miss giving Gandhi the Nobel Peace Prize for what was done? They are part of the society. They can only recognize what is part of the society. Sri Aurobindo doesn't belong to any society, and what he has done is not a social accomplishment. It's not for the society to say it's true or not, any more than the society is qualified to say whether Ramanujam's theorems are true or not. So it's a wrong measure. And even if they had given him Nobel Prize, they would have given it to him for his literature, for his poetry. But Tagore, at least they could understand something of his poetry relates to human beings' love and marriage and society and all of this. This is poetry about the highest spiritual experience. This is mantric poetry. This is over mental poetry. Even if they could appreciate the poetry, they won't understand what it's about. It'll put them to sleep. So, not surprising that if Sri Aurobindo has won the Nobel Prize, then he would be admired as a great poet, which is itself, oh yes, Sri Aurobindo, oh you know Sri Aurobindo, you're a disciple, yes, he's a great poet. Do you also write poetry? To say that Sri Aurobindo is a great poet is what does it mean? His greatness is not because of his poetry. His greatness is because of what he has done for humanity, what he has done for Earth, what he has done as a spiritual being for the future evolution of the whole world.
I mean, one more question. Why did he choose to write in English, the language of a trading nation, as opposed to Sanskrit, which has a high spiritual content? I don't follow that.
Well, I can't pronounce on it. I can only say it was very considerate of him to write in English, because otherwise I never would have read Savitri and I wouldn't be here today. So I'm very grateful to him for being so thoughtful. I can give an explanation, a rationale, but I can't. Sri Aurobindo, in his own life, English was the first language for him. His father wanted him to learn English. The prestige was for English. He studied in English his whole life. He mastered it. He did teach himself Sanskrit. He taught French and German and Latin and Greek also. Why he chose to write in English, apart from the fact that for him, presumably it was his first language, maybe because he had a message for the whole world. If he's written this in Sanskrit, even in India, nobody can access it. How many people could understand it? After all, the Vedas are written in Sanskrit. How many of us today can understand anything? If he wanted to reach the world, he made English into a universal language, a language where the future of India and the future of the world could have access to it. And even if at the time he wrote, it wasn't obvious that English would become so powerful, he has put a spiritual force on the language, and it has become the universal language today, more widely spoken and acceptable than any other language in the world. So if his goal was a message to humanity, he has chosen the best available at that time.
But won't you say that the content of Savitri have been somewhat degraded because they have been written in the language of a trading nation?
He has upgraded the language of a trading nation. This is not the English language of the Englishman that he's writing in. He has created new words, new idiom. He's given the meaning. He's given the language new power that it never had before. He's given the words that are there in the language new significance that they had before. This is not the language of the English trading nation. This is a language that has been spiritualized by his act of embracing it and using it.
Okay.
Maybe there are other reasons, Ashok. It's a good question, but I'm not qualified and I've not thought enough about it. But would Sanskrit, which is a language of the spirit, is it a language of life? So the knowledge that Sri Aurobindo wants to offer is not just a language of the pure spirit. Appa has often said that there's no prose in Tamil. It's a language that was developed for poetry, but poetry doesn't express the same realities that prose does. Tamil prose is only something that's trying to develop now, but there's not a history of a prose in Tamil as there is in English, for example. Sri Aurobindo's goal was not just pure spiritual mantric poetry. He's created mantric poetry in English, but his target is life and the divinization of life. He needs a language that can relate to life and the world and not just relate to highest spiritual oneness. So that's the best I can do in answering the question. he's leading us up to following stages and up to the revelation of the secret knowledge. So he tells us about spiritual ascent, which he's already described to us. This is a summary of the whole thing here. Our souls can visit great spiritual heights, which we've already read about, Aswapati going to the higher planes and worlds of splendor and ecstasy and beauty, beyond anything imaginable here. He says, sometimes when our sight is turned within, we make a miraculous escape from the physical world, from the material reality. Our souls can visit regions of imperishable light, power, bliss, and calm, which Aswapati has already done. But that's not enough. For the Indian spiritual tradition, getting to those regions of light, power, bliss, and calm is the end, is the arrival. We go into samadhi, we go into moksha, and it's all over. For him, this is only a fact and a step on the way. It's not the goal, it's not the end. So he says, not only can the soul visit great spiritual heights, but the great spiritual heights can descend into us, which is not the common in the tradition. It's there in the Vedic times, the powers of the gods descending into humanity. But in most of the Vedantic tradition, it's man trying to leave the world, leave the body, leave the mental and the human consciousness, and go up to the spiritual heights and stay there as long as he can. But he tells us that's only one of the movements. The other movement is the higher consciousness can descend into us. Sometimes the inexpressible mystery, which is what he wants to express, which he wants us to understand, chooses a human vessel and comes down and is born in the human being. And that's what happens in Aswapati. It's not just that he goes up. The inexpressible mystery comes down, and the presence is born in him. A stillness comes, a motionless calm. Peace comes into the very being. A force, a powerful force and knowledge and power come into the physical frame. The Vedic rishis were praying for it, but after that, things became otherworldly, and the whole goal was to get away. But for him, this is critical. It's not enough we ascend. The higher consciousness must descend. In the tradition, we awaken the kundalini in order to rise up and go out of the body. In Sri Aurobindo's yoga, the power of mother's consciousness descends in and awakens the body and transforms it. It's another movement. So this is an important step in the path. He says, I should have written this title differently. The soul, I said the soul can become one with nature and God. What he really describes here is the soul can experience its oneness with nature and God. The soul experiencing its oneness with God is what we call moksha. You go to Satchidananda, there's only one. There's no many. You go to Buddha's nirvana, and the soul disappears in the oneness. But he's talking about not only of oneness with God, but oneness with nature. And that's critical for the secret knowledge. That we can be one with nature as well as God. And why we can become one with nature as God? Because God is in nature also. And that's critical for us to understand. The goal is not just oneness above. The goal is the oneness here, in life, in the body, on earth. So he says, a greater personality sometimes can possess us. The bodily ego thins out. We are no more separate. We're no longer a separate self, separate from everybody else. We're no longer a separate birth, where I was born at a time and die at a time, and I'm a separate thing. We leave us one with, we feel our oneness with all. Not only our all that exists now, but our all in the past and all in the future. We are a oneness not only with the pure spirit, we're a oneness with all manifestation. Not just everybody who's here now. We're one with the whole evolution of life up until now and the whole future evolution, because nature is also key of the equation. That's the secret knowledge he's leading us for. Step by step, he's trying to make us see the difference between the traditional conception and how to get at the secret knowledge. We feel separate from everybody else. We feel separate from our past. We feel separate from our future, let alone separate from Mother and God. When we call Mother, we want to be close to her. But we can, at rare moments, the ego breaks down. We overcome the divisions of mind, and we see there's a oneness with everything. There's no separation between God and nature. There's no separation between us and the world around us. And in that state of oneness, he says, moments when the inner lamps are lit. The inner lamps are lit. Where are our lamps? Which lamps are lit now? Our senses are lit. Our mind is lit. Everything's looking outward. But all the knowledge that we should get goes when the inner lamps are lit, when the inner ways of knowing are lit. He says our spirit sits alone with itself and discovers the depths. A wider consciousness opens, invading from spiritual silences, rays of light, truths that the mind cannot know reveal themselves. We hear
Garry,
what the more... Yes, Ashok?
you mentioned about giving up the ego, but I don't understand who is supposed to take the initiative to surrender the ego. I don't think you expect the ego to do that by itself. It call for its own dissolution.
Very good. Very good. See, as long as I think I am the ego, how can I give it up? Unless I know that I am something else, unless we discover that we are something else other than the ego, how can we give up the ego? Then where are we? So in order for the ego to thin and dissolve, we have to discover that in us which is not the ego. And he has already told us in the previous cantos, and Aswapati has discovered, that behind the ego, there is the soul, there is the self, there is the psychic being. And the first discovery, the first essential discovery for all spiritual experience is to discover that the ego is not our real self. Once we discover that, that still doesn't mean we give up the ego. And in most of the traditions, the ego is very happy to discover that he's a great soul, a great saint, and he can lead other people and all. To give up the ego so that the soul can come forward, the psychic can command, so that we're no longer separate from everybody else. We no longer divide ourselves. We no longer think of ourselves. We no longer think from our point of view. We no longer have a selfish impulse. We're identified with all. Is the progress needed for greater knowledge? As long as we think from our point of view and act from our point of view, we're in the ego, we're in the ignorance. There can be no knowledge. He's talking about revelations of truth. Truth begins only when we get out of the ego. If there is nothing for us other than the ego, of course, there's no way to get out of it. And that was a big debate, which he mentions in I think in Vedantic knowledge, Appa has mentioned it many times, that in the tradition, the Vedantic tradition, they thought that the ego individual is the ego. And when the ego disappears, the whole world disappears. And you can't get out of the ego in the world. And therefore, the only solution for you is to go out of the world. You go out of the ego, you go to moksha. Because they didn't know that the psychic is the evolving soul in nature, in the world, that you can live in the world, in nature, without an ego. You can be a universal being, you can be a divine being in the body. They didn't know that. So the knowledge he wants us to have has to come by discovering the spiritual truth in life. And that's this whole canto is like that. He constantly comes back to it. We have to discover the divine in ourselves. It's not enough we discover the divine in the transcendent. We discover the divine in the transcendent. It's a great spiritual realization. And we have to do that for transformation. But unless we discover the divine in ourselves first, that will only take us out of life. That will never give us the secret knowledge of life, or the secret knowledge of our purpose of life, or why the world is created, or why things happen to us. So he always stresses going within and discovering the spirit within is the first essential step.
Garry?
Yes.
In question and answers, the mother often makes reference to psychic moments in our life when the soul is awake and takes non-egoistic initiatives and experiences non-egoistic experiences. She doesn't clarify what are these psychic moments. Just there is only one line. I suppose devotees have at certain points in their life, they do experience psychic moments when they undergo non-egoistic experiences. Could you please say what are these psychic moments?
He tells us that we are unconscious. We read it just a few minutes ago. We had the screen where most of our progress, we are growing in the light, into the light, unconsciously. Something in us is awake, but our mind is not awake. Our heart is not awake. Our vital is not awake. We are outwardly doing something, but something in us is awake. There are rare moments for most, when we become aware of something in us that is not the mind, not the emotions, not my vital preferences, not my physical body. And Mother says that awakening is that soul, that psychic comes closest to the surface on the birthday or around the birthday. So the birthday is an opportunity to have that experience of that inner being, that presence, that inner delight, that cool feeling of peace, that fullness or love that is not the normal emotions. It's not excited, it's not intense, it's not craving, it's not possessive. That delight of being. And for most of us, devotees have experienced that, a moment of gratitude. Gratitude comes only from the soul, from the psychic. It's not, the ego is not capable of real gratitude. Those moments are rare moments for us when Mother has come and responded wonderfully, or when we've calling Mother for 3 days in intense prayer and we feel her presence growing in our hearts or in our nerves, in our being. Those are rare moments for most of us. We live in the outer personality. When we try to consecrate to Mother, we're trying to create a link between that awakened element in ourselves, of which we're not conscious. We're trying to create a link between that and our surface personality. And the secret knowledge he's giving us is to tell us, what do we do if there's a secret knowledge that we can only have after we have had all the realization? It's not going to help us very much. We need a secret knowledge that will help us today.
Garry,
Yes, Pa.
I will tell you experience of mine. Can you please tell me whether that was due to a psychic moment in my life?
I'm categorically unqualified to pronounce on the psychic moment of other people, but it's difficult to even know our own psychic moments. That requires a spiritual perception. If you want to
But
tell, you go ahead. But you shouldn't take my pronouncement of having any authority to it. Only the fully awakened soul may be able to see what is, and this is only your recollection of it you're telling. Go ahead.
because it
We
was a
listen.
non-ego experience, I thought perhaps it shows some moment when the psychic rose to the surface. I believe it was a non-egoistic
Mm,
experience.
mm.
To that extent, I thought it qualifies to come under the psychic.
Good. Go ahead. You narrate it. I'm just disqualifying myself to make a pronouncement of certification. I have no more qualification than the Nobel Committee. That's all.
This is what happened some 10 years ago. Appa told me something like this. He said, Vasanti is supposed to be paid by Amma, but she has not been paying Vasanti. So 3 years of salary arrears are due to Vasanti, and I am not willing to pay Vasanti for Amma's sake because I have given her a discipline. Must change inside to the extent of persuading Amma to reconsider withholding the arrears. You must work inside yourself in such a way as to tempt Amma to give you all the withheld arrears. And to my knowledge, she has not worked inside and changed Amma. So that the matter stands. I asked Appa how much is her salary per month. She said 600 rupees. So that works out to some 7,200 per year and 21,600 for 3 years. So I thought about it and I felt let me take responsibility for Amma's reluctance. Let me share the consciousness responsibility for Amma's wrong behavior, being her son. I told, so I went and met Vasanti and said, I will clear your 3 years arrears. It's not a big deal of amount. I don't want you to be suffering from cash shortage. So she happily received the 21,600. Went and told Appa, Periyanna has cleared Amma's salary dues. This I feel is a non-egoistic experience of mine, where I did something that was not warranted. Would you say on such an occasion, I freed myself from ego and did something non-egoistic which would qualify for a psychic inspiration?
I think your act is a wonderful act that you've described, and it has a great value in itself if you were observant enough to see the further responses of life to what you have done. That would be great. That would give a greater knowledge. I think for all of us, I'm talking generally now, normally the children carry forward the consciousness of the parents, whatever it may be. You have taken the attitude that if my mother has fallen short, I should take responsibility for making up for her lapse or her attitude, and I should have a different attitude and act on it. That itself is a great attitude, positive attitude of outgrowing the inherited consciousness. So in itself, it shows a growth you are making as an individual, and that principle is very clear. And that's wonderful, and that's a step towards the development of your own individuality and for your own psychic to come forward. Whether you had the thought and the inspiration and you acted, whether you were conscious of what motivated you, how far you were consciously perceived not just the outer result, but the inner experience of doing it. You have described what you did. You haven't described what you felt. If doing that act has given you a joy, given you a peace, given you a freedom, given you an enlightenment, certainly that means the contact with the psychic for that moment or in that instance has been conscious. From your point of view, I would not like to, and so that's as much as I can say about it. You must observe and know how life has changed for you afterwards and how your own inner experience has changed. Because right now we're talking about, he says here, there are moments when the inner lamps are lit, a wider consciousness opens its door, a ray of the timeless glory stoops, the truth that mind could not know reveals itself. We hear what mortal ears have never heard. We feel what earthly sense has never felt. We love what common hearts repel and dread. What the ordinary heart feels is dreadful or repulsive, we love it. That's not the human emotion. That's not the heart. That's the psychic. Hush. A voice calls from the chambers of the soul. We meet the ecstasy of the Godhead's touch. What you have described, I would certainly say, was a higher inspiration, a vibration of goodwill, a desire to be truthful, a desire to awaken and all. And that inspiration could have come from the soul. It can come from the mind that is trying to understand what's right and how it should act and act from higher principle. I have no authority to pronounce on your experience, but certainly I'd rate it as a great initiative based on what you have said. I'd just like to add as an appendage to what you said, and next year is, as far as you know, Vasanti didn't do anything. But it would be really interesting to hear Vasanti's story, because I know something of it, and what she did for 3 years, and what she did inwardly that evoked the response of life through you that paid off the 3 years of arrears, and what she felt when that happened. And whether she felt the gratification of getting the money or if she felt something that was much deeper and richer and spiritual because she knows what she did. We can only, in our lives, we can only know what we do. Everything else is external to us unless we develop the awakened psychic, which is really one with everybody else. Then we can have a greater knowledge. We're only piecing together parts of the story. But anyway,
all I know is what Appa told me. He said, I have told Vasanti to change inside in such a way as to persuade Amma to release the arrears.
Yeah. And what she has done and how she has changed and what she felt is another part of the story, which it's the secret knowledge for us. See, that's our situation. We know something of what happens to us. Mostly we're not even aware of what's happening inside us, let alone what's happening inside Vasanti or somebody else. We see things, we are much more conscious of what comes to us from outside than we are from what comes to us from inside our own being. Those parts are awake, but we are not conscious of them. The soul may be telling us, do this, do this, do this, and we don't even hear it, or we say, no, shut up, I don't want that. We just push it away. Oh, that's not a good idea, I'll reject that. To become conscious is the first link between the inner and the outer. And that's the critical for the secret knowledge he's offering. Unless we get awake in the depths where we're not awake now, where we're asleep, unless we get out of the ego, unless we get out of the mind, unless we get out of our preferences, like Lizzie saying, any man that handsome must be good. How can she ever know the truth? As long as she's enamored of the physical appearance of Wickham or his charming behavior. We have to go inside and light the inner lamps in the hidden chambers and discover the inner presence, and then only we can get this knowledge and make it real. And that's why Appa constantly calls for consecration. Because if you fully consecrate an act, very difficult to go in and reach the soul and make it conscious, then you're a realized being for that. But with regard to a specific situation or a particular person or a particular event, if you fully consecrate it to Mother, with reference to that thing, we reach an inner awakening. And when we reach that awakening, life changes. And we're so happy, oh, I got my salary, or I solved my problem, or I got my promotion, or we got the marriage, or we got the job, whatever it is. But that's not the issue at all. The issue is seeing and discovering the link between inner and outer. And what he's trying to tell us here in the secret knowledge is our whole life is that. Our whole life is not a test. God is not testing us whether we should be punished or our whole life is an opportunity at every moment to awaken to that inner correspondence to the outer so that we can make the maximum progress at that moment. I would say the great, whatever level or of realization or of depth Ashoka has acted, at that moment he was trying to do the maximum he could. With regard not to how can I get my salary? How can Vasanti get her salary? Well, he can't make her pray, and making another person pray doesn't work even when we try it. But okay, I'll take responsibility. After all, it's my mother. So I'll take responsibility that she has not paid the dues. And he has made a conscious effort at that moment to make a progress. And all this knowledge is telling us at every moment we have that opportunity. Even hearing what Ashoka has done creates an opportunity for all of us. What are all the things we can take responsibility for that we said are not my responsibility now? Oh, that's frightening. Once in a while we may do. If it's 21,000, we may do. Suppose it's 2.5 lakhs. Oh, no, that's not my responsibility. He's telling us a principle by how the soul evolves. How did he come to that principle? How did he come to that decision? What is it that he has read? What is it that he's understood from Sri Aurobindo and what Appa has written that says, it's good for me, it's a right thing for me to take that responsibility for what my mother has done. And if a member of my family or my country or anything has done something of which I'm not proud, I shouldn't be like that. I should take the responsibility to outgrow it. It's a wonderful incident of how a life event, which apparently is unconnected with, it's not my salary that's the problem, it's somebody else's salary. If it's my salary, of course, I want to find out how to get it. This is somebody else's salary. What can I do about it? He found a way to do something. He found a way to be responsible for it. And certainly that is a movement from ego to universalizing. It's a wonderful example of something that we have an opportunity for all the time. And that's the secret knowledge is of this nature. When we really have the secret knowledge, we should see that all life is an opportunity for us, and an opportunity for what? For what purpose? With what goal? With what aim? Through what process is what he's going to tell us in this canto. So a great example. So then he tells us there is a knowledge that can come to us from deep inside, not just a knowledge, a love, a joy, a sensation, a voice, an ecstasy. And now he tells us there's a magic key. And this is the key that the tradition missed. They didn't know about the psychic. They knew about the gods. The Vedic rishis even knew about the light in the inconscient. They knew about Satchidananda. They missed the key for the divine life. He says, these signs, what are the signs? The power, the knowledge, the ecstasy, the peace. These are signs that are native to a larger self that lives within us. Unseen. It's unseen by who? It's unseen by us. It's living within us. A diviner presence moves the soul. It's the origin and master key. A living image seated in the heart. The truth of all these cryptic shows in space. What are the cryptic shows in space? The whole life around us. Cryptic, it's kind of secret. It's hard to understand what it is. Everything going around us in space and in time is a coded, disguised form of something. Of a divine life trying to emerge. Everything that happens to us is a movement of a truth that's trying to reveal itself. What is the truth that was trying to reveal itself when Ashok finds out that Vasanti hasn't been paid salary for 3 years? Oh, she must have done something wrong, therefore she's not getting salary. Was that the truth? That's the code. That's the disguise. When somebody suffers, we think, oh, they've done something wrong. They're not sincere, and therefore they're suffering. And we feel a little proud because we're not like that. We got our salary. But Ashok deciphered the code. No. This is not a question of what I should tell Vasanti. This is not a question of blaming her because she's done something wrong. It's not even a question of blaming Amma for whatever reason she has done it. It's an opportunity for me. It's an opportunity for me to make a progress from ego and selfishness to universality. He decoded that one act, that one situation. How many situations are around us at every minute where we say it's not my responsibility? We would even say if somebody asks, I never thought of it. Whoever thinks of solving everybody else's problem? I only know one person. Who's always thinking of how to solve everybody else's problem. You all know who I mean. So it's not only a cryptic show in space, it's the real towards which our strivings move. And this is the whole point of this canto. Where are we going? What are we moving towards? Are we moving towards illusions? Are we moving towards a reality? And what is that reality? And what is happening to us every day, every hour, every minute? How do we respond to it in a way that we move towards reality instead of moving towards an unreality, towards Maya, which we do. When Wickham comes and flatters Lizzie and gives her so much attention, she forgets reality. Oh, this is a nice man. He likes me. He's flattering me. We forget everything else. When you see a rich man, oh, he's a rich man. I'd do anything he wants. It's nice to have a friend who's so rich. We forget everything. We forget reality. We forget only what society values. So at every minute, we have an opportunity to move towards truth and to move towards reality. And the secret knowledge is the code. It's the code to help us decipher the real significance of things, the way Ashok discovered this key of how he could make a progress out of an information that has come to him. He says the secret grandiose meaning of our lives. What is the secret grandiose meaning of our lives? We say we have no secrets. This is what we are. This is who you know. You see what we have. We don't know there's a secret grandiose meaning to our lives, which we don't know. It's a secret not from everybody else. It's a secret from us. The secret knowledge is to help us discover what that is. He says, it's a wonderful line, a treasure of honey in the combs of God. There's a treasure of honey is the secret for us. There's a treasure of honey inside us that we're not aware of. A golden fountain of the world's delight. An immortality that's cowled, that's draped in the cape of death. That's the truth of our being. The truth of our being is the diviner presence, which is a treasure of honey, a golden fountain, an immortal being, an unborn divinity. And he says, always we bear in us a magic key. He knows the goal of the unconscious world. He knows the goal, which we don't know. Even when Sri Aurobindo tells us, it's only an information for us. There's something in us that knows the key, is the magic key, and knows the goal. Knows the goal for us, that can tell us at each moment, what is the goal? How do we make a progress? How do we go forward? That's the psychic. The psychic knows at each moment which is the direction that goes to the light and which is the direction that goes to the falsehood. Which is the one that goes to the truth? Which is the one that takes us away? Which is the one that helps us grow? And which is the one that organizes the growth of the ego instead of the psychic? That presence we have to realize. He's told us this so many times in the past. Why does he tell us again here? Because without discovering this, we can't have the secret knowledge. And that's why Appa constantly stresses the consecration, remembering Mother, because the consecration is to constantly refer back to the divine, to constantly refer us back to this magic key. Even when we can't feel it, even when it's unconscious in us, that's the power of Mother. She puts us in touch with the magic key, which we're not until we discover it, until Mother becomes a living presence in us. We don't claim that we can remember Mother or are alive to Mother at every minute, but consecrating to her, calling her, puts us in touch with that key for that moment when we are thinking of her. So it's the compass to point us in the right direction. Yes. A living image seated in the heart. Yeah. He said the origin, the master clue, the divine presence, the magic key, the unborn divinity are all the immortal, the treasure of honey. They're all referring to the inner divine that's there, seated not behind the heart, in the depths. For us, it's the psychic is the way we reach that. The inner divine, the individual divine. You remember in the traditions, in most of the Vedantic tradition, the divine is up there. And we can go and merge. The only way we can become divine is to give up the body, give up the ego, give up life, give up the world, and merge back in Satchidananda. And the individual is only temporary. Maybe Sri Aurobindo is the first, because Buddha says the ego is an illusion, there's nothing else. Sri Aurobindo clearly affirms the individual is in its essence divine, immortal, and absolutely essential for the divine manifestation. The individual is the key to the universe, not the ego individual, but even there, Mother says the ego was necessary for the progress out of unconsciousness so that we can discover the real individual in us, the divine individual, the spiritual individual in us. That's the key to everything. The key is not up there. The key is not up there. We have to go up there, but we should go up there after we discover the spiritual individual in us. That's the only key. Great rishis, great saints have discovered spiritual vistas and world beyond world above, but they leave the world the way it was. They're true. Their discoveries are true and valuable, but it's not the truth and value that's going to fulfill the purpose of the spirit in the universe, for which the spirit has created the universe and become the universe. We may discover anything, but ultimately we need to discover the truth of our own being, because we are not something just to be given up and dissolved. We are a key to the solution. Without the human evolving spiritual individual, the divine cannot manifest. There can be no divine life. We don't know that now. It's not real to us. So that's why he keeps insisting on this, repeating it over and over again, because in the traditions, they go everywhere. They look for everything. They look for how many levels of samadhi there are and moksha there are, and he's the greatest rishi because he went to the third layer of Mahasamadhi, Nirvikalpa Samadhi or something like that, and left the whole universe behind him. And when he finally gets there, he disappears, if he can disappear. It's not clear whether the soul can really permanently dissolve itself or he has to come back again and start until he hunts. I'm not quite clear about that, but it's very clear, Shurabando means, that the world cannot achieve, the divine cannot achieve what it destines in the world unless we discover the divine in ourselves. Okay?
Garry?
Yes.
You are talking so much about the power of consecration. I would like to see if it can really deliver the results in even if the situation I describe is somewhat imaginary. You can theoretically prove to me that consecration will deliver the results even in this situation, then I am willing to take the power of consecration somewhat more seriously.
By definition, theory is not proof. Proof is in practice. Even in science, the theory is an explanation. The proof comes from the experiment. So a theoretical proof is not a real proof. Go ahead.
Keeps on repeatedly saying that the power of consecration can cancel what has happened in the past. Let me put it this way. Let us say a man has been ill for 5 years and spent a good deal of time in the hospital undertaking treatment and recovering. He was earning 30,000 rupees per month. Because of his illness, he resigns his job and to expenses, he sells his land and spends 10,000 per month for hospital expenses. For 5 years, he has lost a total of 18 lakhs income, assuming it to be 30,000 per month. And by way of medical treatment, he has spent another 6 lakhs. So over a period of 5 years, the man has lost some 24 lakhs of his income. Do you really believe that the power of consecration can cancel that 5 years of idleness and compensate him in the coming years with some 24 lakhs of additional income to cover up for the money that he lost? Does consecration have this power to cancel 5 years of idleness because of illness?
You're asking me, do I believe it? Absolutely. But you asked for a proof. If you want an opinion, if you want a belief, absolutely. So, if you want a proof, then we have to think about what are the examples, what proof can we give? We can only give examples of other instances which are similar in magnitude or similar in nature, of which you have heard hundreds and thousands in the past, and so many devotees have reported, and Appa has written by the hundreds in his writings.
I suppose there are devotees sitting there who have wasted 5 years because of medical reasons, and I believe if some of them have compensated for that 5 years of lost productivity, they can share their experience.
If anybody would like to share their experience, that's very welcome. No compulsions. But if anybody has something they would like to share, that's very welcome. I think there are, I'm sure if after the talk, we will think of 100 examples, and I will think it's hard to think at the moment. I will tell you only one, which I'm sure won't satisfy you, but in my own life, 1970, I dropped out at 71. I dropped out of medical school. I came to India and joined the ashram. I spent time working in MSS, working on the farm, working with Appa, doing so many things for which there was no income or salary paid for 20 years or 18 years. I had a roommate in college who, when I dropped out and came to India, he went on, graduated, went and got a degree as a lawyer, and then he went on and got a PhD as an economist. And when I met him 20 years later, he was earning at a very high level, had a big house and everything, and was paid a high salary because he was both a professor at the university and a successful lawyer in his own business. In my first year, after we wrote the book Vital Difference and I went back there and we started getting consulting assignments, I got paid more for a day's work than he was being paid after 20 years working on his career and getting these 2 degrees and building up his practice in the world. And when we came and met each other, and I wanted to know what has happened to him over the 20 years, and he wanted to know what was happening to me over the 20 years. And when he found out what was happening to me, he was totally bewildered. So how can that be? I've worked, you gave up everything, and you went to the ashram, and he was so curious about how this came. He actually came to Pandi and spent time with us in the house. He was, well, how can that be? I did everything, you gave up everything, and yet you seem to got what I got. It was unintelligible to him. So I think not everybody would like to talk actively. There are so many examples Appa has given in his writings about people who missed everything and had it come back for them later. The man selling the property for 81,000, which was really only worth about 12,000. The water diviner who hadn't gotten income from digging all of these wells for everybody and never getting paid. And when he changed his attitude in 1 year, he had a house and he had built. All the stories are confirm that. But you want proof.
This only apply if in the point of view of Dave Lane, the years spent in the ashram were wasted years.
Yeah, from his point of view, it's wasted years. From an ordinary point of view, I have given up doing everything that should earn me an income. So for him, it was wasted years. I think, going back to your question, Ashok, I think it's good to ask for proof. The question is, how do you get proof? You get proof by taking a problem that we have, or taking your own life and applying the principles that Appa has said about consecration, and seeing the result. Only then you can call it a proof for yourself. If anybody else's experience can only be an example, can only be an encouragement. Huh? You want to share? Please come. He was in Papua New Guinea, I think. Is that what you said? Earning 7,000 or 8,000, 78,000 per month. And then you weren't well there and you came back. No? You gave up that lucrative job. No? And what you had given up in the job came back to you as the rising value of your property here. Am I correct? Ashok knows all of these examples already. It doesn't make the proof for him. Say, if anybody knows... Huh?
What is her name?
Padma.
Padma Venkatesh?
Yes. See, even for the property in our properties in Cuddalore, the same thing is there. What we didn't get because we missed so many earning opportunities for so many reasons over the year came as the escalating value of the property. Unbelievable escalation. Balaraman, the same thing. He never earned on his property for so many years, and his property became worth crores without him doing anything. There are so many examples. The best example for you, Ashok, would be your own life, which I don't propose that we discuss now. But anybody else who knew your life and what has happened would feel that who could ask for more proof than this, than your own life? But you take it for granted. You take it without reflection. You want a proof of some other description, which I don't know what it is. Anyway, good question. Look for that proof. If you're not satisfied with all the proof that you've heard from others, which I'm sure you won't be, if you're not satisfied with your own proof from the past experience, of which you've had many, then take up an experiment. That's what Appa proposes for all the devotees. Take up an experiment and see what you can do. That's the best proof. The problem is when we get the result, we forget about the proof. We're satisfied with having solved the problem and got the result. We miss the knowledge, which is much more valuable than the result. The divine gives us the result so that we should get a knowledge. We throw away the result, which is like the banana, and we keep the peel, which is like the result. We discard and miss the secret knowledge as if it's nothing. It's only a banana. So we keep having to search. Now he says, and this is very interesting because this is a direct message to you, Ashok. The next slide. He says, mind sees only chance, not purpose in life. For our waking mind, life is a goalless voyage. We know we're moving. We know we're constantly moving. Things are constantly changing. We have absolutely no idea where we're headed or what's the goal. What happens to us? It happens by chance. Or it happens by some necessity or karma or without any aim or intention. Our lives are purposeless because we don't know what's the purpose of our life. And what purpose that our mind has adopted for our life has nothing to do with the purpose that our soul has in coming and being born, or that the divine has in creating the world and giving us a life in the world. The problem for us is mind cannot know. That living presence inside. He says our life is a vague experiment. That's what it is for us. We try this, we try that, we get, oh, this works, I got a little something here, this works, I solved the problem there, I got a little promotion there. And we're satisfied if we have successful experiments, and the things that fail, we forget. We never ask, what's the purpose? What's the purpose of all these experiments? What's the purpose of going through all these things? I want to solve all my problems. Why should we come and be born on earth just to solve problems? There were no problems before we were born, and there'll be no problems after we're born, afterwards. Is life only about solving problems? What's the purpose, he says? He says, to the mind, the earth, the physical world is like a brute machine. It just works according to its own way, and we don't want to be abused by the machine. We want things to work the way we want them. Death is a net that's going to catch us, and we're trying to escape it as long as we can. We don't know why there's life, why there's death, why things are happening to us. And the secret knowledge should tell us at every minute why we're here. What is the purpose? How do we grow? How do we progress? What does the divine want for us? What does the soul want for us? How can I use this situation to make a progress towards purpose? So this is the problem of the mind. He's told us the truth. The truth is there when we know the inner presence, but this is how the world looks to us. And he says that when we aspire, when we genuinely say, okay, I want to understand, I want to make a progress, when life tries to make a progress, we find everything is a mystery and a paradox or a riddle. Nothing explains itself to us. Why that man who's been telling lies all the time and he's become very rich? Why that man who is stealing so much and running black money and everything else, he seems to be very happy. Why I'm not getting what somebody else is happening? We don't know what everything means or why it's there. He says, there's an aspiration in the nights profound. Earth has an aspiration. You remember in the symbol dawn, he told us that even in the depths of the inconscient, there is an aspiration that's trying to awaken. And it's that aspiration that calls the goddess of the dawn to come. So that aspiration is very powerful. He says it uplifts its lonely tongue of conscious fire. In the Vedas, the fire is Agni. Agni is the aspiration in us. The most awakened thing in us is not our mind, which doesn't understand and can't know, not the ego, which is a false identity. It's our aspiration to be better, our aspiration to reach the divine. But we don't know what's the reason for our suffering here. We don't know why God permits the world to be the way it is. This is not the way. This is not what God should do, give us problems and all of those things. We don't know why. It's fine that somebody tells me I'm immortal, but why life is like it is. It's a riddle that we can't understand. If we have the secret knowledge, the paradox disappears and we understand. The riddle is solved. We know the answer. We get the magic key. That's what he's trying to offer us here. We don't know why Wickham comes. Darcy doesn't know why Wickham comes and suddenly launches a scandal against him. Lizzie doesn't know why just at the point when Darcy's coming to her at Lambden that news comes of Lydia's elopement. If Lydia has eloped 1 month after her marriage, it's different. Now everything collapses. The whole family is ruined. Why did it come just at that moment? Why did he come just at the moment when the letter came? It's a riddle. It's a mystery. Nothing is the way it should be, is what we feel. But when nothing is the way it should be, life is offering us the greatest knowledge if we try to really understand it. Then he says something which we might take for granted, but it's really very important. He talks about nature. He calls her the earth goddess. The earth goddess. Nature is not what the scientist thinks, just the mechanical laws of the physical world. Nature is the earth goddess. And she's toiling through time. Nature is toiling through time. What is she toiling for? Where is she headed? What is her purpose? Does nature have a purpose? According to the scientists, nature has no purpose. It's simply growing by chance. By chance, it created the amoeba and the fish and the plants and the animals, and now by chance or accident, it created human beings, and we don't know what monstrosity it may create in the future. It has no purpose. He says the earth goddess of nature is toiling through time. Not only that, but she's seeking something. Nature is seeking something. You'll never hear a scientist say that nature is seeking anything. We are seeking something and not finding it in nature. She seeks through the soul's wars and pain. Even through our pain, she's seeking something. A pure perfection. Nature is seeking perfection. She craves a faith. She's seeking a faith that will overcome all defeat. She's craving for a sweetness of love that can go beyond death, that can live beyond death. She's seeking for a radiant truth. This is very interesting. You won't find it in any spiritual tradition. God may be seeking, man may be seeking, the soul may be seeking. Nature itself, the world, life is seeking knowledge, truth, beauty, love, and perfection. Nobody's ever said it before. Life is either just by chance and accident, or it's not seeking anything, or each of us is seeking something for ourselves. The whole world, the whole manifestation is seeking these things. It's a profound truth. Then it raises the fundamental question which he's going to answer in this canto is, what is nature? How can nature be seeking? How can it be seeking those things? According to science, nature is only the elements. Who is this thing that is seeking? Why is it seeking? And why are things the way they are? This is the secret nature. Huh? And, well, why on earth alone is... actually, Mother doesn't say it's only on earth, but earth is the key. Earth is the key for nature may be there all over the universe, but earth is the center of that seeking. Yes, definitely.
Garry?
Yes.
See, I am a man who functions on the basis of well-formed judgments. About people, about events, and about my surroundings. Recently, I've been shocked out of my wits and forced to cancel all my judgments. But having been so habituated to forming judgments, I don't know how to proceed on life without forming judgments. But life has become so unpredictable and uncertain, and that any judgment seems to be valueless. That's still by life. But this has been my habit from childhood to form judgments and proceed on that basis. But recent events have cancelled all my judgments, forcing me to be suspended in the air like that. Is it wrong to form judgments and hold on to them?
It's a great question, Pa. Great question. It's right and great to seek for knowledge. And mind is our highest developed instrument for knowledge, our reason. And instead of when Lizzie reads Darcy's letter at Rosings that tells her all about Wickham and what he has done, all her prejudices, all her judgments, she has made judgments. She's made judgments that Wickham's a good man and Darcy's a selfish, proud, arrogant, mean man. And she's an intelligent girl who, if you ask her, would say that she makes judgments very carefully. And everybody knows Lizzie to be more observant and aware than others. And yet when she reads Darcy's letter, she realizes that all her judgments were judgments of her vital preference, were judgments of her senses that mistook the appearances for the reality. She has misjudged Darcy, she has misjudged Wickham, she couldn't tell a truth from a falsehood, and she comes away astonished. She says, I have been absurd. I have acted absurdly. I never knew myself till now. Can we say it was wrong to her to make those judgments? What would we tell her about those judgments? To know that our judgments are all based on our ignorance, and to have the wonder of Lizzie is she was sincere enough to give up her judgments, to give up her opinions, to give up her preferences, and try to form a higher understanding. She had the sincerity to say, I was wrong. And supposing, I'm going back to your question, is it wrong to cling to my judgments? Darcy says, I'm a person who once I make a careful judgment of people, and once I come to that conclusion, I never give it up. But Darcy never made a correct judgment of himself. And after Lizzie has talked to him and told him what he is, he had to reevaluate his own judgment of himself and give up his opinion of himself, which he thought he was very proud of, and realize, he said it was a bitter lesson. So what does Sri Aurobindo tell us? Obviously, we know that the vital is not capable of true knowledge. For the vital, something is good if it's pleasant for me. Somebody is good if they do something that I like. Somebody is bad if they disagree with me or oppose me, instead. That's the vital. It has nothing to do with truth. We know the mind, he's telling us over and over again, we just read it a few minutes ago. The mind is only seeing external appearances of things. It cannot know the truth of things. But if the mind is the highest knowledge we have, does it mean we shouldn't think? Does it mean we should just go on our impulses? Exercising our mind to try to understand things is exercising our quest for knowledge and truth. But once we know that the mind is an instrument of ignorance, that it's an instrument of limitation, that it's used by the ego, that it looks from its own point of view, and all the defects of the mind which we have been discussing and Sri Aurobindo has talked about, and even in the academy we're constantly talking about, and Sherlock Holmes is illustrating by how everybody makes the mistake and comes to the wrong conclusion. Where's the question of clinging to our judgments? Clinging to judgments which we know even when we make them can at best be only a partial truth. They can never be the whole truth. Our mind is not capable of the whole truth. So if we're going to use the mind, and we should use the mind because it has a power that the vital doesn't have, we should always have the humility to want to learn more and want to give up our partial understanding in favor of a higher understanding, or our wrong understanding in favor of a right understanding. What clings to judgment? What clings to judgment is not the mind, it's the ego. Because, oh no, this is my opinion, I have announced it to the world, I don't want to be proved wrong. Sincerity of the mind is to recognize its own limitations and always be willing to acquire a better knowledge and to hear another person's point of view and to approach a problem from another angle and never claim I know the final judgment on this. I am right and everybody else is wrong. I hope that's a satisfactory answer.
Garry, I came to one shocking conclusion, cancelling all my judgments. That's great. I've been under the impression that the more a person knows mother over so many years, the more serious the devotee becomes. That was one of my judgments. Recently, I came to know that some devotees, even if they have known mother for 2 years, they act and behave in such a way that they don't even qualify to be elementary devotees. Now my association between the number of years of knowing mother and corresponding maturity, that judgment has been cancelled. I am now forced to admit that it doesn't matter how many years you know the mother, it doesn't qualify to make you a serious or mature devotee. You can be as silly and uninformed even after 20 years. Now, on what new basis am I to look at devotees now, if years of knowing mother does not count?
This is a wonderful question and a wonderful realization. If you should find out where was the mistake in your previous logic, so you don't repeat it. Mother is true. You have made some assumptions in your logic that confuse what mother is with what the devotee is. There are several common mistakes like that. Elizabeth made one. Any man that handsome must be good. Looks absurd to us. A handsome man is a handsome man. Men make that mistake all the time about women. That woman is so beautiful, she must be a good lady. Often it's the opposite. What are the mistakes that mind is capable of? They're known. They're discovered already. We repeat all of those mistakes. We go by the appearance of things. The appearance is not the reality. That's one mistake. Second thing is we take an action for the reality. Say a devotee is not somebody who does something. A devotee is somebody who's devoted. Devotion is not an action. Devoted is an attitude of the being towards mother. Somebody with faith in mother, trust in mother, sincerity in mother is a devotee. A devotee is not somebody who's known mother for some period of time, somebody who has devotion. They may not even know mother, but they may be devoted to mother. A devotee is not defined by how many times they come to the center or how many pictures of mother they have or how many flowers they offer to mother or even how much of the offering they give, though presumably if they give an offering, at least they have faith that it's good for them. A devotee must be known by their devotion and their aspiration. But how to assume that just because a person knows mother, that their aspiration keeps growing? All that we have read and talked about is there are two things that are important. The aspiration that goes from below and the response of the grace from above. Mother is the grace. The aspiration is the devotee's part, is the soul's part, which means the soul aspires, but the soul may not be awakened. So your assumption amounts to anybody who's been in mother's presence for a long time must have an awakened soul. Everybody who's in mother's presence benefits from that presence. But it doesn't mean that by the number of years you're in mother's presence, the soul automatically awakens. It depends on the person. It depends on the response of the soul. Mother's grace is there, but everybody out of the grace gets something different. See, India is prospering today. The opportunities for people, for education, for prosperity, for advancement, for travel, for everything are far greater than before. It doesn't mean that everybody who's been born in India at this time and reached the age of a certain age has gotten the same thing. Education is available, jobs are available, but something depends on the response of the individual. That mother offers is certain. that what we receive depends on us. So your conclusion arises because you have confused mother's capacity to give with simply the act of being in contact with mother. It becomes a judgment, it becomes an opinion, it's based on a premise. What is the reality of that premise? Say, not everybody who goes to the university learns the same thing. No. We saw in the Bennett family, 5 girls grew up in the same house. What did they get? Lizzie got so much. She developed so much. Jane got some sweet behavior. Kitty Mary's a 0. Lydia's a minus infinity. She's going into causing disaster to everybody. We can say, oh, family is wonderful. It's a cultured, wealthy family, and so everybody should get everything. They didn't. Everybody got according to their aspiration, according to their capacity. So your discovery is an important discovery for you, but you should go to the root of it and see where the mind makes an error. So the next time you don't apply the same erroneous principle. We have discussed it before. Just because somebody says something doesn't make it true. Any more than just because somebody does something doesn't make it sincere. Person can do something for so many reasons. Just because a person looks some way doesn't make that the way their character is. These are all things that have been known. We can't judge things from outside. We have to judge them from inside. And devotion to mother, relationship to mother, is not an outer thing. It's an inner thing. We can't judge the inner thing from the outer thing like that. It's a great knowledge for you, but try to learn more generally the mistakes that the mind can make. This is one of the mistakes that the mind can make. Okay. So he's told us that nature seeks something which nobody has told us before. Nobody has said before. We may seek something, but nature is seeking something. Now he says that consciousness is evolving in life. Nature is seeking something. Consciousness in the world is evolving through life. And we know, we've discussed it many times, consciousness is evolved from matter to the plant, to the animal, to the human. And Sherbindo says it's going to go. This is not what the scientist knows. There are different species with different consciousness, but has not realized that consciousness is evolving. Nature is striving. Consciousness is evolving. But so far, he says, the truth eludes us. The truth eludes us. We still don't know. But one needed truth, the one truth we really need eludes us, eludes our grasp. We are learning lots of things. We've learned lots of things from coming to Mother as devotees. We learn lots of things in school and in life. But the real truth that we should get eludes us. If we really know that truth, that's the secret knowledge, we'll know at every minute what we should do, what progress we should make. And then a whole lifetime can be abridged into a year, or a whole lifetime can be abridged into the next act. If we have that secret knowledge in that measure, we know at the next minute what we should do to fulfill nature's striving for knowledge, truth, beauty, love, and perfection, what we should do to evolve our consciousness. Then life becomes an adventure of consciousness. That's really what we're here for. Not to accomplish the next goal, finish the next work, buy the next object, or whatever, conduct the next marriage, to make the next progress we can make in consciousness. The truth eludes us. Herself and all of which she is the sign. Herself, her is nature. All that nature, the signs of nature, meaning all of life around us, is a signal to us. We miss it. The writing is there on the wall. Nature's saying do this. Nature's saying do that. Become unselfish. Be more honest. Be more responsible. Like that. Everything is a signpost. We don't read them at all. We don't understand the language. We neglect them. An inarticulate whisper drives her. There's a whisper for us all the time. That's the whispering voice of the soul telling us what we should do at each minute. But it doesn't speak loudly and it doesn't insist. And we override it with our mind and our vital and we ignore it. It's okay. Let me do what I want. We miss the signs that are there at every minute. Sincerity is at every minute not to do what we want, not to do what we think, not to do what is comfortable or convenient or beneficial for us, but what she wants us to do. And that's the role of consecration. Consecration is we hold back the desire, we hold back the thought, we hold back the opinion, we hold back the attitude, and we refer it to Mother so that clear, soft whisper can tell us what's the next thing I should do. Not what my body wants to do or my vital wants to do or my mind wants to do. And then he says, the truth that she has missed, she is nature here. Nature is all of life, of which we are a part. The truth that she has missed, which she's looking for, looks out at her. Looks out from where? Not looking down at her. Looks out at her. The truth that all of us are missing is looking out at us. From where? From inside our own being. We're looking outside for the truth. We're looking outside for what we want. The real truth is inside. We need to look inside to see the truth that's looking out at us. It's from the inner presence in us. It's as if far off. For us, the truth is far off. For us, everything divine is very far off. She says it's as if far off, yet it's within our own soul. Everything we need to learn, everything we need to know, everything we need to be is very close. Only thing is we have to change the direction. This is the direction of the ego. This is the direction of the senses. This is the direction of the mind. We have to reverse the direction. That's why consecration is all-inclusive method. It's to reverse the method at each time, the direction at each time. All knowledge is within. Your question is a good question. How to distinguish between the inner whisper of the soul and the mind's thoughts. You know what a thought is. The inner whisper comes when the mind stops thinking. As long as we're trying to find the truth by the mind, the inner whisper won't be heard. Even if it's heard, it'll be misinterpreted and for its own purpose. This comes when we stop thinking. This comes when we stop desiring. How to stop desiring? At every minute, we're desiring something. So many people, most people, everybody, when they feel they know what Mother wants, they really are responding to their own desires. And many people mistake their desires as what Mother wants and say, God's talking to me. Mother told me to do this. It happens to be exactly what I want to do for my vital satisfaction. So what do? We're like that because we have a vital that wants, we have a mind that thinks and tries to know. That's why the real consecration begins. Suspend the desire, suspend the opinion, suspend the attitude. That's a bad person because they don't like me, I don't like them. Suspend the thinking and try to be very quiet. And in that quiet, which is not a desire and not an impulse and not an opinion, consecrate it to Mother, think of Mother, and either that knowledge comes or life comes and acts. She acts through life and shows us. Should I call that person? Should I hire that person? Should I marry that person? In other words, when we withdraw from ourselves, all our judgments, appearances, everything, and we go within and we really offer it to Mother, life acts and confirms. I understood your description, but not your question. Let me repeat the description for others who can't hear you online. And then you come back and ask the question. You said that I have asked you to suspend the urge. The urge is something that comes spontaneously to the surface and compels us to act. And you've understood rightly that consecration is not to follow the urge, right? That's the first part. Now, what's the question? Say, what do we normally do? We normally follow our urges. I'm thirsty, so I take a drink. I'm angry, so I shout. I'm hungry, I go eat. I want attention, so I draw attention to myself. Normally, we are our urges of different types. Different types of urges are there. They're at different levels of our consciousness. We are our impulses, our urges, our feelings, our sensations, our attitudes, our emotions, our ambitions. There are all types of things which we can call urge at different levels. But what we are normally when we talk about ego or our nature is we are our urges. When my mind has an opinion, I follow it. I don't question it. I am my opinions. When my vital is afraid, I am my fear, or it's angry, or when I like somebody, I am that. So the first step of progress is to not be what we are on the surface. To step back and detach from the surface nature and know my thought is only an opinion, it's not the truth. Whatever the thought is, I see the thought, I have an insistent thought, let me not justify that thought as if it's the truth. It's my opinion. I don't like that person. I see my ego is hurt because that person's ignoring me or that person is looking down at me as Darcy was looking down at Elizabeth, called me tolerable. I don't like him. Okay, I may or not like him. It's only my vital attitude. What he is and all is not, I shouldn't judge with my vital. Let me not behave according to my attitude, which is of the vital. I see that man has a nice watch. I don't have such a nice watch. I feel like grabbing it and taking it from him. That's not a good thing to do, I think. That watch belongs to him. Let me not follow my urge. I'm very angry at that person because they have they're a DMK man or an ADMK man or a BJP man, and I want to tell them off and tell them how foolish they are and stupid they are to be that. But it's probably better that I don't express my opinion. I should keep quiet. We are filled with urges all the time. And normally what do? We express our urges. Some of our urges we know are not socially permissible. I may like the watch, but I can't grab the watch or say, can you give me your watch? Occasionally somebody will ask like that. Oh, this is very nice. Can I have it? Occasionally, but most people won't ask. We still want it, but we won't ask. When in Pride and Prejudice, when Jane and Elizabeth meet with Kitty and Lydia at the inn, and Lydia tells them the news is that Mary King is not going to marry Wickham, and that he's lucky to escape from that ugly girl with the curly hair, red curly hair. And Lizzie says, you shouldn't talk that way. But Lizzie knows she had the same thought. He's lucky to escape from that girl. So Lizzie won't express it. Lydia expresses it. But she still has the same thought. Our progress is to separate ourselves from our nature, which is our swabhava. which is our inherited character. Partly comes from the society, partly comes from the family, partly is unique to the individual. But none of that is the master key that we're looking for. None of that is the inner divine. None of that is true. None of that is the psychic. So at each moment, the goal is to detach from the surface movement and not become it. Just because something in me is angry, it doesn't mean I should go and beat that person or shout at them. It doesn't even mean my anger is right. I should try to detach from my anger. So detachment from the surface nature is the first step towards going inside. You can never discover the soul as long as we're identified with the vital ego, the mental ego, the physical ego on the surface. So the first step is to step back. Consecration is not possible as long as I'm identified with the surface. First of all, I won't even remember to consecrate. I won't even think to consecrate. I hate that man. He deserves to be beaten. I'm going to beat him. I'm angry. Sri Aurobindo says in Life Divine, I become anger. It's not that I am angry. I'm not just angry. I become anger. I'm sorry. I lost myself. I don't know what got into me. I just became anger. We become the impulse. To become conscious. What does it mean to become conscious? To become conscious means to be able to become, first of all, conscious of the surface as separate from ourselves. To detach ourselves from the surface movement. Ashok is now reflecting on his thought. You see, I had a thought. It was a wrong thought. Now I have to change my thought. What does it mean? It's a wonderful example because it means the life experience that came to him came to disillusion him about a particular thought. But that's not really what happened. The life experience that came to him came to disillusion him about accepting the mind's judgment as reality. And all the life experiences that come to him, because he's mental, because he's constantly using the mind to form judgments, all his life experiences come to him to help him detach from the judgment of the mind and understand that's not truth. It may be logical according to the mind. It may have its own rationale and its own evidence, but it's not truth. So life is coming to help him realize the truth is not mental. Life came to show Lizzie that the truth is not the vital appearance of a handsome man and a pleasant person. The truth is something else. So life comes to each of us according to our awakened consciousness to tell us this is not the truth. This is not the truth of our own being. And we get the truth of our being and our mastery of our being only when we are able to not become it, but step back from it. And that's what consecration really means. You can't consecrate something. When we say consecrate your desire, you can't consecrate his desire when it is you. You can only consecrate it when you can see it as something separate from you, like an object. Yes, I want to take that watch, but I shouldn't take it. How can I consecrate it? If I'm really the desire, I grab it. If I see the desire, it's a wrong desire. I shouldn't be coveting anybody's watch or anybody's car or anything. Let me consecrate that, meaning something is not the desire in me. At least my mind sees the desire as something separate. My mind is consecrating the desire. Ashok has to go from the thought. He's the thought now. He's trying to go to another part of the mind, which is not the thought, which can see the weakness or fallacy in the mind and discover a knowledge that's not mental. When I was answering your question, I'm lost in my thoughts. I'm lost in listening to you, and I'm trying to understand your question and answer it. I'm lost in my thinking. Now, since you asked me that question, how do you consecrate that? Something in me at the moment that I'm answering you and listening to you, something in me has to be aware that I'm not just my thought. that I'm not lost in this act. There's something in me that should remember Mother even when I'm talking to you and we're answering this question. All of us, I think, we're engaged in the discussion. We're trying to understand you. You're trying to understand my answer. Maybe some of you were so awake that all this time you're still thinking of Mother. But if I'm not able to think of Mother while I'm talking to you, it means I'm fully lost in my thought or my action. So part of me, I'm still talking. I'm still trying to answer your question, but part of me is trying to remember Mother, see Mother, imagine her, feel her, remember her. And my consecration was I'm trying to satisfy you. Now I'm trying to do the same thing. I'm trying to offer this to Mother. Same act, same movement, but can't I, while I'm speaking to you to answer your question, can't I remember that the goal is that when I answer your question, I should offer it to Mother, rather than I should think of satisfying the audience or showing that I know an answer or something else. Our consciousness is capable of multiple perspectives, even at the same time. Close friend and associate of mine for many years who was with Appa back in the early 70s, he said when he went to a US and became a management consultant and he was addressing audiences, in the middle of his speech before 300 people in the audience, he will be aware that what he's saying is what he heard from Appa. He'll remember. See, I'm not speaking my view. I'm speaking, even though he's speaking it. At the same time he's speaking it, he said, oh, this is what Appa told me 20 years earlier. Something is separated. We're capable of that separation. If we're not capable of that separation, it means we're fully identified with our nature. All of us are capable of that separation because we don't all grab anything that we like. If there's a mango in the we don't grab the mango if it doesn't belong to us. And if there are other people there, we don't start eating. We offer to share with our guests. All of us are capable of separating from our impulses. So consecration it's very difficult. I'm not trying to make it sound as if it's very easy. We all know it's very difficult. It's very difficult to sustain. Consecration is to try to be conscious more and more of Mother, even when we are acting, even when we're speaking, even when we're thinking, even when we're feeling. To fully consecrate, though, to fully consecrate means, I want to drink this water. I'm thirsty. I'm going to drink it, but I say I consecrate this drinking to Mother. It's a partial consecration. First of all, it's only a thought. Now it's a word. Instead of thinking or speaking out, I'm consecrating it to Mother. I think while I'm drinking, I'm consecrating to Mother. But I'm only consecrating it as a thought. The urge is still to drink. I'm thirsty. Can at the point of my urge to drink, can I remember Mother? Before acting, before reaching for the bottle, can I remember Mother? Can I go back? If I can go back to the source of that urge, where is that urge? Maybe it's a tickle in the throat or something else, or a habit, whatever it is. Can I see Mother there? Can I give this act to Mother? If I fully succeed in giving the act to Mother, I find out I'm not thirsty anymore. The thirst goes away. If I want to abuse you or accuse you or tell you something and I fully consecrate it to Mother, I find that that urge to abuse goes away. Or the thing I think I would like to tell you and help you understand, you will understand by yourself and you will speak out to me. I've not done that. I keep thinking that I should explain to you something and I should understand something from you. If I fully consecrated it to Mother, Mother, this is your work. This is your act. I'm only here to consecrate. If I fully consecrate, my words will be effective or I don't need words. But I'm here to talk. There's an urge to talk. Why shouldn't I sit quiet and the knowledge comes to us? If I can fully consecrate, the less I say, the better. That's so. My point is that consecration has all levels to it. When I am able to fully consecrate, even one act, not every act, just theoretically one act, I decide I want to start a company, or I want to do this thing or do that thing, or if I can fully consecrate it, I don't have to act at all. Life will act, and the best thing will happen. You consecrated a physical urge, which is very difficult. You really offered it to Mother, to the point that Mother could act not only on your urge, but could act in life. Not just because you really, what does it mean to consecrate? Consecration is not prayer. Prayer is, Mother, I want water, please give me water. That's prayer. That's not consecration. Mother, I feel thirsty, I offer it to you. I surrender it to you. When it's fully surrendered, the thirst of the whole town gets met, and now you say Tamil Nadu's thirst gets met. Wonderful example. It's exactly an example of how a life situation. This started with vegetarian food, and how it spreads. Can we even conceive that everything that's happening around us, whether we're thirsty, whether the water is costly, whether they're serving vegetarian or non-vegetarian, or breakfast or lunch, whether there's a charge for the costumes or whatever it is, everything is an opportunity for the progress. The goal is not to get the water or the vegetarian food or this or that. The goal is to become more conscious, and life is presenting us those opportunities. It's the process of becoming more conscious. Sure, certainly. Consecration is not spontaneous. Yes. What do we mean by spontaneous? You're right. We all know that. What does it mean? What it means? It's an important question, because it's exactly what he's talking about. When we are part of nature, everything is spontaneous. Meaning, what's another word for it? Another word. Unconscious. To be unconscious means to be the impulse of nature. The animal is not conscious of what he's doing. He knows, he does. The animal is not saying, oh, I forgot to consecrate this. Oh, I'm thinking about my lunch and not other people's lunch. The animal is not self-reflective. It just is the urge. When I'm thirsty, I grab the bottle without thinking. I have to become conscious. When we say conscious, we mean to be self-aware. We are not self-aware. I'm aware of my thirst. I'm aware of the bottle. I'm aware of you. I'm aware of your question. I'm trying to answer your question. I'm not aware of that inner presence or Mother's presence that is really of a higher consciousness. In other words, I'm lost in the act. To be lost in an act. I'm sorry, I don't know what got over me. I just got excited, or I just got angry, and I don't know what I said. I just spoke. Whatever came to my mind means we are lost in the act. All of lower nature is lost in the act, to the point he's going to tell us about it. That's why he touches all these points in this canto, to show us where we have come from. Even when we're lost in the act, something in us is awake. Something is growing towards the light. But we will never get to the light unless we first become aware of that and make our acts more and more conscious. We have come this far, maybe through thousands of births or tons of, I don't know how many births. We have come to this point of knowing Mother, of being capable of becoming conscious of our acts. The first step is to become aware of our acts, to become conscious of our soul or of Mother as something separate from our acts, separate from our urges, and to relate the lower, which is our nature, to the higher, which is the highest thing we're conscious of at any moment. Say, if you interview me for a job or a big contract, and I know if I can tell you a lie, I'll get a lot of money. If I just say whatever will please you without reflection, I'm lost in the act. So, no, if I tell him this, I may get the job or I may get a lot of money, but it's not good to lie. Something in me is conscious that I'd be telling a lie, and that lying is not good, that lying is not sincere to Mother. So let me not act on the impulse to tell a lie. Let me be sincere to Mother is a form of consecration to Mother, and I tell the truth. Our whole life is like that. Our whole life is an opportunity to be more conscious. You're saying, I couldn't help it, I was thirsty, I drank, I didn't think about it. We do it all the time. But if you want to consecrate, the first step is to not do it mechanically and unconsciously. We breathe. How many of us are thinking about either of our breaths? But ultimately, that's why the rules of psychic education, Mother's rules of psychic education, before you speak, consecrate. Before you speak is not enough. You should be able to consecrate as you speak. Before you eat, consecrate. Not only before you eat, as you eat. Before you act, while we act. We are lost in our everything, so that's very difficult. So Appa gives a practical formula. If you're calling Mother constantly, if you're remembering Mother, even when you call Mother, you may be acting unconsciously. I may not even know what I'm doing. I'm still doing all my, but I'm calling Mother. Or I may be remembering Mother, but I'm still acting normally. But something in me is awake. And the more awake it is, the more consecrated the act is, even when I don't consecrate it. When I become a little more conscious, I'm conscious that I'm acting, I'm conscious of Mother, and I offer the act to Mother. It's a more consecrated act. When the act is fully consecrated at the mental level, still, my emotions are not consecrated, my urges are not consecrated. If I can remember Mother at each level and consecrate those urges without acting, everything gets done. Not what I want done, but the best possible that's done. Not just water to quench my thirst or Sundari's thirst at night, but the water to flood a desert and to give to everybody. So that's the process. If you've understood it correctly, you've understood it's difficult. You've understood it's difficult to do for one act, let alone every act. And that's true. It's difficult to do at the mental level. It's much more difficult to do at the emotional level. Before I speak, maybe I can try to consecrate. But how to consecrate before I think? The thought's already gone. And before I feel, oh, that's not a feeling I should have. At least if I can't consecrate it beforehand, I can try consecrating it after the fact. If I foolishly told a lie, if I couldn't consecrate before, oh, that man wanted me to say something, I said what he wanted. He said, do you like my thing? I said, yes, because he's an important man. Okay, at least afterwards I can consecrate. This is a process. This process is the same process that goes all the way to the ultimate. This is the same technology, the plane that will take you from here to Coimbatore will also take you around the world. Same plane, same process. Effort required is more. So the point is to start where we are. Where at each minute where we are, how can I be more conscious at this minute? What happens when I'm more conscious at this minute? I see there's an opportunity that I have missed. Like she discovered in the thirst or in the vegetarian meal. And life is all opportunity like that. And when we become more and more conscious, we begin to understand why life is like it is and why things are happening to us. We get the secret knowledge. So whether you start with prayer or you start with calling or you start with constant remembrance, these are steps along the way of consciousness that should lead to consecration and ultimately should lead to surrender. When the consecration becomes surrender, I no longer act. I simply surrender everything that happens in my nature, and Mother acts. She may act from life. She may act directly through me. It'll be Mother speaking. It'll be Mother acting. And the results will be not the results of my personality or my consciousness or my character. It will be the results of Mother's consciousness going to the other person. We withdraw more and more from ourselves, not to become nothing, but to become what we really are. To give up the limitedness, the ignorance, the selfishness, and all the falsehood, all the surface nature, so that Mother can act all more and more through us. We can say so that the divine presence in us, the psychic in us, which are pathways to Mother, Mother's behind all of them, can act more and more. The results we get are no longer the results of our personality, of our ignorance, of our selfishness. The results that come are the results of Mother acting. And the results come not only to us, they come to everybody. That's the process. Start where we are. Start with something. Don't worry about start with what we can do. Try something and see the result. I'd like to just take 5 more minutes. I'd just like to end this on a particular point for today. So I just do this we've already done, I think. This we haven't done before. We said that nature seeks knowledge, beauty, joy, peace, power. Now he tells us something else. Nature prays to higher powers for these things. If you think of this in the evolution of humanity, humanity seeking knowledge or joy or peace or love is one thing. Humanity comes to the point, we come to the point of, instead of seeking them, we realize there's somebody who can give them. And we start praying to that. It's a higher stage in our development. Instead of work hard and you get what you want, or tell any lie and you get what you want, no, be truthful and pray to Mother or consecrate. We switch, this focus switches from outwardly doing it to inwardly being true, to calling down the higher powers to act. You see, he's telling us the next stage of transition. It's come for Mother, it's come for us. We have come to the point of praying to Mother for what we seek. This is a higher stage of consciousness. Relying on myself, relying on my ignorance, relying on my falsehood, following my impulses is a low consciousness. It's an unconsciousness. Stepping back and consecrating is a higher consciousness. Calling Mother or relying on her to do what should be done, to give me the knowledge, to bring the right conditions, to bring the water, is a higher level of consciousness. This is the transition that takes us towards the secret knowledge. It's not the secret knowledge yet. We still haven't gotten to the secret knowledge, but the more we move from the outer to the inner, and the more we move from the inner to relying on the more we are preparing for the secret knowledge. So nature is doing that. We are nature. We're part of nature. Humanity has come to the point, at least in Mambalam Center and other centers, of praying to Mother for things. And then it says, we get a vision that meets us, meets nature, of that there are powers above. And when we know there are powers above, then the goal is not just to get what we want here. The goal is to reach those powers. The human being who thinks that the purpose of life is only to get food and clothing and housing or reputation or something is lost in the material world. When we become aware that there are powers above, and these are powers of truth, joy, strength, beauty, love, and delight, then we realize the goal is not to get all of these things. The goal is to get that. That's what the Vedic rishis were praying for. They were praying for the supernal powers to come down. Passionate, she prays to invisible forms of gods. What most she needs, we still don't understand what we need or what our purpose is. Just because we believe that there are gods or Mother there and Mother will give us things, we don't know what our purpose is or why we're here. But we know that we'll get more if we pray to Mother. That's not the secret knowledge, but without that knowledge, we won't get the secret knowledge. So we still don't know why we're here. We still don't know what we should pray for. We're praying for all the things that the ego wants. We're not really praying for what we should be asking for because we're not conscious enough. When we become more conscious, we will pray for really what the soul wants and really what the divine wants to give us. The divine can't give us what we don't want. If we want water and bananas or popularity or money, it can give it. But to give it what it wants to give us, we have to aspire for that. We're not conscious enough for that. Sri Aurobindo says if humanity knows what's waiting for us, what the divine wants to give us, the beauty, the love, the ecstatic joy, the power, the knowledge that's waiting for us, he says we won't wait for a minute, we'll drop everything. But we don't drop everything, we value everything we have. I got my watch and my mango and my water and all, because we're unconscious. So this secret knowledge comes only when we go through these stages of awakening to become conscious. And then he says, when we become that conscious, we, nature in through us, starts to claim what's her right and destiny. What's our right? Our right is not to more watches and mangoes and water and popularity and houses. We have a right, he says, a destiny. We have a title claim to something, and God wants to give it to us. But only when we aspire to it can we get it. He says that our souls accept what our blind thoughts refuse. Our blind thoughts are thinking about all of this. Our soul knows why it really came and what's waiting and why we're here and what the divine wants to accomplish in us and through us. And that comes, and when we awaken to that, then we begin to the possibility of acquiring the secret knowledge. And then he says, and what appears, he says, the impossible God sign of things to be. The impossible sign, you remember in the first chapter of Life Divine, he says nature's method is to propose the impossible and make it happen. That is the sign of nature. That's the divine way. The mind doesn't accept it. It wants only the possible, the reasonable, the limited, and all. when the soul awakens, when we awaken to the fact that the impossible is what's due to us. That's why Appa talks about the 100,000, the 100 crores and the 100,000 crores also. When we know that the impossible is really our due, not the ego's due, the soul's due, the divine's goal, to bring a joy, a fulfillment, a knowledge, a power, an ecstatic fulfillment of that. When we know that, we begin to qualify for the secret knowledge. And then he says, what does nature discover? It discovers that everything that happens on earth is part of an illimitable plan. Whose plan? The plan of the One, the divine plan. You mean there's a plan? The divine has a plan? We have so many plans. What is the divine plan for us? We don't think about. Every morning, do we wake up and think, Mother, let me fulfill your plan for me. I have so many plans. I want to go here, do that, get this, do that, and all. Mother has a plan for us. Even to know that she has a plan, man doesn't know. We forget. Even if we've heard it, we forget it the next minute and we start doing our thing again. Mother has a plan for us. The fact that we know that she has a plan for us, and it's not our plan. It's an impossible plan. It's not the possible plan that, let's be reasonable, I'm not greedy, I'd be happy with the 100 crores, not more, that's quite enough for me. It's an impossible plan. It's not an impossible plan, it's an illimitable plan. What is an illimitable plan? A plan, by definition, is something that has a beginning and an end. No? A plan means, here's what I have, and this is what I want, and here's my goals, and here's what I'm going to do, and I get the goals. The plan the divine has no limits. It has no end. It's not. It has goals, but these goals are not for a certain quantity. It is an endless, continuous more of the divine. So, only when we wake up to the fact that there are divine powers, that those powers are there to act in our lives, that it's our destiny, it's our title deeds. These are entitled. We already have the title deeds. We just have to claim them. And that what the title deeds are not to what is reasonable and as good as everybody else has. It's an impossible, illimitable plan. Then we qualify for the secret knowledge, which we'll take up next month. Okay? Thank you.
இவர்கள் அனைவருக்கும் நன்றி வணக்கத்தை கூறுகிறேன். இந்த சீக்ரெட் நாலேஜ் இந்த சாப்டர் ஃபர்ஸ்ட் பார்ட் நிறைவு பெறுகிறது. Now I am giving Mr. Garry sir thanks from everybody and all the senders. Now I am closing the session.